Hey, I'm Landon Herring, and this is my 3-minute speech over my English portfolio. So, to begin with, I started with my literary analysis, which was 3 pages over the Odyssey, which we read towards the beginning of the class. Basically, what I did over the Odyssey, I won't read all of it, obviously, but I just went over the story and what I got from it. And really, what I got from the Odyssey is the importance of leadership. We see with Ulysses, he's the leader of troops. He's a leader, and his failure of good leadership ultimately gets his men killed. I know it was a lot deeper than that. Obviously, his men didn't listen to him, but like in the beginning of the story, they don't listen to him and the things he says. And they want to stay and fight in Troy after he tells them that they need to leave. This ultimately gets them punished by Zeus, who throws them off course on their way home because Zeus wanted them to stay and fight to the death. And then later in the story, we see all his men die because they eat the cattle that Ulysses tells them not to eat. And, Ulysses did warn them, but I think that it was just the fact that he didn't have they didn't respect him, and he didn't make them respect him. I also talk about Unbreakable, the movie that we had to watch. I thought that movie was really good, and what I got from that movie, one, I love superhero movies, and one thing I never really thought about until I watched that movie is that every superhero and villain is connected through their powers. Like, the villain is always the opposite of what the hero has. And then I also got from that movie that, I got it from Antigone, the Odyssey, and Unbreakable, that death in stories is very important. Like in the beginning of the movie, we see David on a train, and then he crashes. And then he is the only survivor off that train. Because of this reason, Elijah finds him because Elijah is obsessed with finding the opposite of him, because Elijah has a rare disease where he's super weak, but he also has a very high IQ. So he was looking for his whole life for the opposite, a man who could not die, and David was that person. Now, if a couple more people would have survived on that train crash, then Elijah would have never found David, and the movie would have not been the way it was. I also watched Split. There's the sequel to the movie. I talk a little bit about that in my English portfolio because it adds a lot to the first movie. And then there's Glass, which I don't really go into in my English portfolio, but I did watch that one too, and it kind of combines the David and Elijah and then Kevin, who we're introduced to in Split. Then I also talk about The Telltale Heart a little bit, how paranoia was like the main thing we see in the whole book. Paranoia really gets to the main character of the story after he murders the man, and that's another part where death comes into the story and really creates the story. After he murdered that man, he began to get really bad paranoia from it, and ultimately turns himself into the police, not on purpose, just because the glass eye and the heartbeat just drive him insane. But at the end of my English portfolio, I talk about what all I've taken away from this class, which was leadership is a very important. In Antigone, we see it with Creon. He kills people for no reason. I mean, he killed Antigone and her sister because they went against what he said, even though they just wanted closure for their brother's death. And then this ultimately causes his family to take their own lives because they can't live with everything that Creon has done. So that's one example of just being a good leader, because he was selfish and he made decisions because they entertained him, but he really had no reasoning behind it. And then we see again with Ulysses in the Odyssey, he didn't have good leadership over his people, and it got them killed. So death was a common theme in a lot of the stories we read. And then, I took away that being a good leader is very important in life in general. We see it in these stories, and then so that was one very important thing I took away from this from all these stories. And then from the Telltale Heart, I obviously took away just, do things that are good. Don't do things that you never regularly do, because they cause paranoia. Like, I've dealt with paranoia before because I made decisions that were bad, and that it ultimately ate at me. The paranoia got at me. But yeah, that's basically my English portfolio. I mean, there's obviously a lot more I talked about within it, but that just is basically the summary. Thank you.